Alright folks, so in this video what we're going to do is we are going to kind of run through the three genres from the Italian Trecento that the textbook gives you, and we're going to start with the madrigal. So for those of you who had music appreciation or history 1 with me, this is not the same madrigal. It's a different thing. In this case, the meaning is poem in the mother tongue. It's complicated. It comes from the word matrix, which is like womb in Latin, referring to the mother, etc. But poem in the mother tongue meaning Italian. And that makes sense, right? They were excited to be writing poetry in their native language. So madrigals have a particular form to their poetry, which is some number of stanzas, and then let's look. So some number of 3-line stanzas and then a sing-off. You can see down here stanza 1, stanza 2, and then the ritornello, which comes from the word tornado, like turnaround. And if you remember the name for bar form in German, with the Stollen, the pillars, and then the Abgesang, the sing-off, yeah, the tornado is like that. It's kind of like a punchline in a way, right? And then if you actually look at what they're saying in the text, no more did Diana please her lover when just by chance, totally nude, he saw her amidst the chilly waters. Then did the rustic mountain shepherdesses please me when I gazed at her washing her snow-white veil that shields her graceful hair from the sun and the breeze. Such was the experience that had made me, even when the sun was scorching, shiver all over with an amorous chill. So when I was talking about the pleasant place and the way the love depicted in this kind of poetry was different from canzo love, this is what I'm talking about. This is, earthy. It's not love from afar. This is almost kind of NC-17. Now, as far as musical things to look at that are different, we're going to listen in a second, but a couple things that are French that I can point out, or from the French tradition. First is the fact that it's just 2 voices, right? We haven't seen that for a while. Things have been either monophonic or 3 or 4 voices. So this is kind of like going back to OG Notre Dame polyphony stuff, discant style writing. Another thing we can see from the French tradition, if we zoom in a little bit, is the kind of classic accursus, like you can see here, where we have, the tenor and the cantus move in contrary motion, stepwise motion to a unison. Right, we see it there, we see it here as well, same deal. Again, this was the original accursus, not even the inverted one that's like a major 6th moving to a perfect octave. This is a 3rd moving to a unison. And even you can notice with the sharps, they're doing that thing I talked about this week with the musica ficta, intensifying the cadences by getting a half-step relationship in there. Now, for new Italian things, there's 2. The first is notice look at where the words show up in the music. So word, melisma, and here's another word, and then melismas, and then all these words kind of clumped up together here, and then melismas till the end of the phrase. And this is typical, right? In the Italian madrigal, you often see melismas, and then we can call them word clumps, where all the words are sandwiched into a tight space, and then melismas again. And this goes along with that idea of having music that doesn't distract from the text, right? You get the fancy, fun music part in melismas, then you get all your text in, then you get back to musical interest in terms of the melismas again. The other thing which is sort of characteristically Italian was what we see in this measure here, where you have these descending seconds with repetitions that happen. They make for a kind of sigh, da 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 da, and it's on the word Diana, which is the woman that he spotted bathing, right? And so this sighing figure, da 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 da, is another sort of typical Italian touch. Let's listen to just a little bit so you can hear some of these things. So listen for melismas, word clumps, melismas, and then the sign figure when we get to Diana. And then they're going to repeat the whole thing over again. The next kind of genre is called the Caccia, which is actually sort of a sort of subgrouping within the madrigal. It's a type of madrigal, so it's still going to have. Let's go over and look at our Caccia. Still going to have the kind of texts of stanza, and then ritornello, sing off, right? And actually, despite what your eyes might be telling you, it still has that two-part texture of cantus and tenor. The thing that's different here comes from the meaning of the word caccia. Caccia means chase, right? And the chasing, one part of the chase meaning in this case is the fact that the cantus is sort of sung in two parts that chase each other. If you look here and then here, you can just sort of follow along and see, I mean, they are identical. The cantus would have been written out once, and then you would have had what's called a rubric, which is a word that's probably familiar to y'all, which means like a rule. And so the rubric would have been, when you get to measure 12, or then start singing the same part again with the same rhythm, and they just sort of overlap. This is a kind of canon. That's a term you... come on, pencil. Oh, thank you. There we go. Canon, which we'll get more into next time, but kind of like row, row, row your boat or something. Now, there was another kind of chasing in this, almost two kinds of chasing in this, and we can go back and look at the text. One kind of chasing that often showed up in the Caccia was like hunting, literal hunting. So, poems about hunting deer or foxes or whatever. And then the other kind of chasing or hunting was hunting the, quote, prey of love, right? Sort of men and women chasing after each other. And so for both of those, they show up in the poetry. One is often you get onomatopoeia, right? So like animal sounds or the sounds of, horses' hooves clopping, like that kind of stuff. Dog sounds, hunting horns, whatever you get in the poetry. You don't get so much of that in here, although, this isn't, stuff like this isn't great dialogue, right? It's almost more sounds than text. And then the other thing that you often get is a kind of double meaning that is revealed based on how the words line up. I'm not gonna get into the details here. I'll let you all figure that out. But I mean, I guess what you would ask yourself is they're talking about a fish, and then when she says Emelina caught it, the question worth asking is, did she catch a fish, or maybe did she catch something else? Anyway, the other thing that I just want to point out before we move on is what happens here, which is what I was talking about earlier, where you get a change in mensuration. So we start out with this, sort of 6/8 mensuration sign, which lasts pretty much for the whole, big stanza bit. And then when we get to the sing off, we get this 2 times 1/4 thing. So the mensuration changed when we got there. And so that's just like I was saying earlier, an example of changing the mensuration at a structurally important moment. In the next video, we'll talk about the balata and wrap things up.